Hey gang, on the bench today we've got an Ovation guitar. This is a Legend from the mid-80s and it's got some issues. I saw this guitar a few years ago for a setup, and in the interim things have gone terribly wrong. There's a big crack that runs all the way up to the bridge here in the lower bout, and several more that run between the bridge and the plastic sound hole ring here, which seems to be the effect of dryness. This is a humidity issue. The top is quite sunken in front of the bridge, and also the fingerboard extension there is dipping down rather precipitously into the sound hole. So Ovation guitars, they're kind of on a tightrope at the best of times, because you've got this really rigid structure, this fiberglass bowl, which is also a very rigid shape. It's kind of egg-shaped. And then on top of that, they put a natural wood soundboard, a solid soundboard. So they're marrying a very hygroscopic material to something that is inert. So when changes of humidity occur, top expands and contracts a little bit. I mean, they build it with a slight arch to begin with, but if it happens to get really dry and flatten out, there's no place for the top to move. The sides and back aren't going to move like on a standard guitar. So sound hole humidifiers, essential. Keeping it in the case, essential, especially if you live in a climate like Ontario here, where we have long, dry, cold winters. You know, it's essentially the self-destruct mechanism is initiated if you don't use a sound hole humidifier in an Ovation guitar. So this customer wants to get this back on the road as much as possible. I'm going to have a look inside and see just how extensive the damage is. I can put cleats on things. I'm going to see if I can maybe flatten out this area of the top. Last night I kept it in a big plastic bag with a towel that was soaked full of water, so trying to force some humidity into it and take out some of the dryness. Okay, so this has the sort of characteristic 1980s Ovation bracing, which is just a bunch of almost like fan braces that run the length of the soundboard, almost parallel to the grain. Not a whole lot of support cross-grain wise. There's that one little piece that runs next to the sound hole, and you can see that it's got the little metal lath epoxied on top of it, of the outer braces. And someone else has been in here previously putting some cleats on a crack that runs next to the bridge there. Looks like they actually missed the crack with those. Or maybe there's another one that's closed up so tightly that it's invisible. There's no cleats on the other crack. I don't think I can get down far enough for you to see it in the camera. So, you know, it looks like the main braces seem to be all okay. They're not broken. It's just that there's a lot of deformation. You can see how much the top is sunk in the center there. It's almost 3/32 of an inch in front of the bridge. Just doing a dry run here, I discovered that by using these heavy-duty acrylic cauls, they're about 3/8 of an inch thick, so they're really rigid, and they span those cracks. They're about 4 inches long, that I can actually press out a lot of that sinking in the top there just by spanning them. So I think that's what I'll do first. I'll get some glue in those cracks, and I'll reclamp this back up. Just focus on this section to begin with, and worry about that one later. I'm protecting the inside of the top with a couple of pieces of wood that have cork on them. So yeah, shouldn't be too arduous. Okay, so I've got all the cleats in place here. I'm looking at the top, and there's still a bit of a dish in front. It's better than it was, still not great. Looking at the only transverse brace on this guitar doesn't run the entire width of the top. It runs from here to here, and there are two. It's basically an H shape. It's very, very small. It's only about 3/8 of an inch high by maybe 3/8 of an inch wide. And it's sunk in that area, and I can actually push up on it and sort of influence the top in a way I like. So what I'm actually going to do is graft a secondary brace over top of that one in that area. Now this brace here, it's difficult to clamp things on this because we have that raised plastic rosette ring. I've got a piece of relatively stiff mahogany here with some cork on it that will go over top, and this brace here that I'm using to correct the arching a little bit, actually it's not flat, I've planed a slight arch into it. So I'm basically laminating this to the, well, slightly flat or slightly convex brace that's on there, and I'll clamp it in place, and it's basically making like a plywood. It's forcing things in the direction I want it to go, and hopefully that'll stiffen the area up and prevent it from sinking further, and maybe flatten it out a little bit. There we go, I've got that clamped into place now. So now the height is a shade over 5/8 of an inch, which is more of what you would find in, say, a Martin style guitar. Okay, we're all set. Is it pretty? No. Is it functional? Yes. So all those cleats there and that new brace, that looks okay. It's doing what we need it to do. It brought us up to close to flat in front of the bridge here. And interestingly enough, that raised the action considerably. What went from a very low action ended up being too high. Luckily enough, there was a shim under the saddle there for me to take out, and I could plane that down a bit. Got us back into playing shape, and it's ready to go. So it's not going to disastrously collapse in the middle of a show or anything like that. Long term, who knows? I'm beginning to think that Ovation guitars were really designed for touring musicians with a big budget. You know, they buy a new one every tour. Because this design, this one's 35 years old, it's holding together, doing pretty well for itself, I guess, considering. But the movement back and forth between seasons really will do this thing in the end, I think. Anyhow, it's back and it's playing well now, so I guess we had a successful venture. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again soon.